And good evening, commanders and travellers of space and time and interlopers and anybody else who's here. Welcome to the Monday afternoon, Monday evening stream. To talk about science fiction and fantasy and stuff. So here we are. Welcome to everybody. And particularly welcome. Well, not particularly. That's a bit mean. But welcome if you're new, and welcome if you've been here a long time. It always annoys me actually when people say, particularly welcoming new people, because you people who've been here all the way along, you don't deserve any welcome at all. It doesn't seem right, does it? It reminds me of those, pretty much every company now, you get a new starter bonus. It's like, what about me? I've been here for 10 years. Why did I get a bonus? It's just really annoying. Companies don't reward loyalty nowadays, which I think is a sad thing. But there we go. Anyway, it's lovely to see you. So Wintermute is here. B5 is coming back. Okay. JMS is rebooting Babylon 5 for the CW channel. The B5 is the only acronym I understood. Who's JMS and who's CW? You must tell us more, Wintermute. Tell us more. That sounds quite exciting. It is awesome, yes. Anyway, so hello. If I let me on the stream, yay! Welcome there, Glenn. Good to see you. Jalen here says, I'm 7 pages from the ending of reading Adrian Tchaikovsky's Child of Time. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommended. Okay. Better. Oh yeah, he's good actually, Adrian Tchaikovsky. Yes. If I'm pronouncing that right. Yes, definitely recommended. He's occasionally on Twitter as well. I've had a couple of chats with him. He's quite an interesting chap. Anyway, tell us more about Babylon 5. That would be quite good. So what was I distracting myself with just as I started? It was all about loyalty. So anyway, if you are new here, welcome, and if you've been here for a long time, welcome as well. It's nice to have everybody. I think that's important. Companies do go out of their way to entice new customers, don't they? They don't value their existing ones. Apparently, it's much easier to get new customers who have no idea what your reputation is like than to retain existing customers who know precisely where all your foibles are as a company. So that seems to be something that's just a thing nowadays. I don't know about you guys, but I have to annually ring around and try and get competitive quotes for everything. It's just so annoying. And I have to ring up, then I have to ring back the original provider who I'm currently with and say, look, I've just found a quote that's cheaper than the one you've just offered me for my renewal. And they go, oh, well, we can match that. And they usually do, bar a few pence. Which of course, the problem is, for every of these suppliers, like electricity, gas, car insurance, house insurance, whatever it happens is, that's a 20-minute exercise at least, which is a complete waste of my time. But I have to go through it every year in order to retain the price that somebody else is able to quote that my existing supplier, for whatever reason, won't quote me in the first place. It's just so annoying. Why can't you give me the best possible price in the first place? But they never do. So there we go. That's my whinge of the day, that is. So Babylon 5 getting rebooted. Okay, so JMS is Joe Michael Straczynski. So he created and wrote Babylon 5, and CW is a US TV channel. Okay, so there we go. JLN has found a link. So wow. Okay, interesting. When's that due? I wonder. So yeah, Glenn says, how about you just give me the discount before I call? That's exactly it. That's not how business is done nowadays. But there we go. And welcome, Commander Ocon. Always good to see that. So wow. Okay, so Babylon 5. Now reboot. Now, an awful lot of people are fans of obviously the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, which is now getting on a bit itself, isn't it? Quite a few years ago now, and I did enjoy it to a degree, but reboots, you see, and it's basically we didn't like the first Babylon 5. Okay, before you are, she's turned off. Darn, foil again. Alexa, switch back on. It's on CW, so I'm already concerned. So I don't know. I don't know what the CW channel is in the States. It's not one I'm familiar with. So I don't know what other networks it might be on internationally. Is it Netflix, Amazon, Disney? Is it affiliated with any of those? I don't know. So some things are best left. Well, the thing that annoys me, you see, reboots are all very well but you are hanging on the coattails of a brand, which I always think is, it kind of implies that the story you want to tell isn't good enough to stand on its own. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying it will be rubbish or it will be good, but I'm not a huge fan of reboots in general terms, because there are so many other worthy stories that haven't yet been put to TV or film that could be put to TV or film. There's plenty of original stuff out there, so I don't really think that reboots are required in a kind of creative sense. Why not go and tell another story, a new story, an alternative story to the one that you've already told? But I I live in this wonderful airified creative world where we should just create things because that's what we want to do, and money and stuff shouldn't come into it. But of course, in the real world where I don't live, there has to be advertising revenue, and there has to be this, that, and the other, and movies have to be successful and make money. Apparently, I mean, I don't know why that would be. And the same for TV shows. So brand recognition is obviously therefore an important thing. But the problem is we keep rebooting things rather than there is original stuff about, of course there is, but I suppose there's a balance. And there are plenty of things. I mean, I'm quite looking forward. I haven't seen it yet because I think at the moment it's only on Apple TV. And there's another whinge about all these these streaming services coming up. And that's the Foundation stuff. I've heard that's not bad at all, but I haven't got Apple TV, so I can't watch that either. Wintermute says there are lots of stories in the Babylon universe which haven't been told yet. I suppose that's true. That's fair enough. Is the reboot what is it? Is it a reimagining? Is it a chronological sequel? Is it the same characters coming back with different actors? What is it? I suppose reboot is a bit of a nebulous term in that regard. Plenty of new stuff, but the studios and networks won't risk new things. Yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? Babylon 5 I enjoyed in many ways, says Kelly Bagdale, but Crusade was simply awful, not confident they'll improve on the original at all. Yeah, I know what you mean. Lucky Luigi's here. Hello, Lucky Luigi. Paul Will. What's your take on Benson and Hedges? Says Paul Will 123. I'm not sure what you mean. Birdbrain. BSG was ruined by the writers' strike and reduced budget by the end of its run. There certainly was some impact on that, wasn't there? There's also I heard similar comments about Battlestar Galactica, to be honest, that the first 2 seasons were really rather epic, and then it kind of lost its way and got stuck in romantic subplots, and then basically the ending was God did it. It's like, really? Can't get away with that as an ending. So I didn't like the ending to Battlestar Galactica, but seasons 1 and 2 were very, very good. So Commander John, I think it says Foundation. I watched the first 2 episodes of that. Got a 6 month sub for free on my PS5. Okay. So far, really enjoyed it. Very divergent from the source material. Okay, so that's interesting. So again. And we've been through this as well, haven't we? Divergent on the source material. And on one hand, I get it, because TV and film is a totally different medium to a book. On the other hand, I don't like it, because it's not happening according to the way the book's written. So that's difficult. The Landra says, 0701, hello Lalandra. The telepath war, the involvement of Earth Force and Shadow Tech, the real power of the Techno Major. Yes, it's all good stuff. So I don't know. Reboots. Well, I suppose you've got to give it the benefit of the doubt. So, as a reboot, I suppose the new Battlestar Galactica was pretty successful. Probably did better than the original one in that context. Star Trek reboots kind of took in a new generation of fans who had never really been into Star Trek. I suppose. So that's those sort of things I suppose are good. I suppose even you could almost argue that the latest Star Wars stuff is kind of almost a reboot, isn't it? I don't know. On the other hand, you say, the new Star Trek, had it have been a new space epic with a spaceship that goes off and defeats alien bad guys and stuff, would it have had the draw if it didn't have Star Trek as a brand to support it? Is the story good enough without the brand? Those are the things that worry me about reboots, is actually are you badging a substandard story with a brand just to make money out of the brand. You tell me. I don't know. Commander Goodnote, what about V? Ended after one season, or was it two? I can't remember. I do remember V. I haven't watched V for a long time. I'm worried that some of those old shows won't stack up very well. True Hager. It's always something you authors can look forward to. If someone remakes your story for film, at least you get to roll over in your grave. There we go. A new Picard series was naff, terrible writing. So I didn't. Yeah, bits of it I thought were okay, and then it didn't really grab. It wasn't very memorable either. But I don't like the new Star Trek at all. What's the new main series? Star Trek. I've forgotten. so lacking of an impact on me. I can't remember the title. The one with the spore drive and all that silly nonsense. Star Trek Discovery. There we go. Star Trek Discovery. No, I don't like that at all. So I mean, your mileage may vary, of course. And I'm not telling you what you should think, but it's just not Star Trek as far as I'm concerned. And I must admit, I watched some of that Lower Decks stuff as well, the cartoon thing. And whilst it's quite funny and it does send up Star Trek quite well, it's kind of like that's not what Star Trek is for me. And I get that you want to diversify things and all those kind of things, but I don't know. It's just not Star Trek. It's something else. Picard I thought was better than Discovery, and probably better than Lower Decks for me. But is the Hatpin Jupiter? No, I think it's just generic random planet, I'm afraid. I need to get a good Jupiter one, would be a good idea. Me Videos here and says hello, or waves anyway. It's difficult. I mean, to me, Star Trek's almost had its day from a kind of creative perspective, and I think dare I say it, Star Wars too, as a film franchise. Now, I thought what Star Wars did with The Mandalorian was excellent, and to be honest, some of the cartoon stuff they've done, I don't know if you've seen things like The Bad Batch and things like that. Those are actually quite good, if a bit simplistic. Whereas The Mandalorian, I thought was much better than the films, and it's as if I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's much creativity going on there, and Star Trek is sort of now lampooning itself in the Lower Deck stuff, which is kind of okay, but it's not really boldly going where no one's gone before, in my opinion. And Picard is sort of, I think, resting on the laurels of the past, of the next generation. I don't know. It feels, I suppose, reboots to me in general terms, or spin-offs and things like that, just feel like exploitation of a successful story, and can never quite reach the heights of whatever the original story was. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel. I'd much rather see some new stuff, that doesn't have the weight of expectation and associated with it from previous. If Picard or Mandalorian, the Mandalorian would have been fine without being a Star Wars thing. It would have been really good on its own, just something else. But it then loses the brand recognition. Wintermute, TNG never went boldly. I suppose they did spend a lot of time in conference rooms, didn't they, and playing music. And I liked TNG. I must say, I was a bit of a diehard right at the beginning. It's like, well, you can't remake Star Trek. I was probably saying the same things back then, and I did end up quite liking TNG. Are we talking books and movies? Well, we should be talking books, of course, but we always get a bit distracted with video. Apologies for that. The topic today we will get to, but it is a tradition on my streams to have a bit of a waffle, I'm afraid. Whatever's annoying me in the first sort of 20 minutes or so. So I apologise if you're new and you haven't seen these streams before. I do get sidetracked, and we do get to the topic, but sometimes it's a bit of a roundabout way. And yes, we are talking about writing, I suppose, in general. We will get to the topic of books, which is where I spend most of my time. But writing in general is something we like to observe about in the sort of fantasy and sci-fi realms. I heard there's some kerfuffle about The Mandalorian now, that Kennedy told them not to pursue the Luke Skywalker ending of season 1. Ooh, okay. Yeah, I was a bit surprised by that inclusion, because it felt like that was sort of hooking up with the main franchise. Oh, that's how it's hooked up with the main franchise. I didn't think it needed it, really. I thought The Mandalorian was strong enough storyline to, loop around that without actually having to bring in big big names from the movies in order to kind of justify its own existence. I thought it did pretty well, actually, not having some of those big names in it. It made the Star Wars universe feel like there was other stuff going on around the outside of all those events that was fun to watch. So, but yeah, there is space. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, bad pun. Yeah, there is there is space. The final frontier. No, stop it. There is there is space for other stories that don't need these big brands, and that could explore similar themes. I mean, Star Trek to me, for example, is always kind of exploring the human condition, but out in space. Look, squirrel, yeah, there. And Winnie, yes, we've been talking about the Babylon 5 reboot, so that's what started me down this line of whinging about reboots. So it's got to be a balance, and but you see, there's loads of things, and I'm kind of glad they've done Foundation. I would like to watch that once I figure out how to get Apple TV. Maybe I'll find a subscriber thing at some point, a free subscriber thing, and get that to try. So Rob's 2610, and the Ashoka Tano inclusion was nice. It was nice to see her as not a cartoon, wasn't it? So yeah, I liked that. But she's a relatively minor. I mean, not depends what you mean by minor, but she's a relatively minor character in the Star Wars sort of pantheon of characters. You know, she doesn't have the brand recognition of Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or something, isn't it? Apple TV is not worth the money, but find it free if you can. Okay, so, and yeah, Dune is, I believe it's just hit the cinemas now. So, you know, I will be making some time to watch that in October. That will be interesting to see what that's like. And Glenn's read the first Dune book, so it'd be interesting to see how close they stick to the book. To be honest, I ought to reread it. I haven't read Dune for probably about 20 years. So that would be quite interesting to see what they've done. I've heard good things, but yeah. So it's definitely worth reading the book again to get a feel for it. But I definitely want to see it, so I'm looking forward. So so that's good. So there are big stories that haven't yet been made into TV series. So, all the time things like that are outstanding. Now we've ticked off Foundation at last, so that's Asimov. We've ticked off Dune, so that's good as well. There's various sort of Heinlein-y stuff out there as well that maybe ought to be done. Anne McCaffrey, I mean, come on, my favourite author. Where's her stuff? None of that's been turned into TV or film. She's dead, so it should be easy. She can't complain about it. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, sometimes these things get stuck in IP rights and things. But I mean, come on, who doesn't want to see the Dragons of Bern turn into? That would make a good TV series, I think. There's lots of good sci-fi from yesteryear that hasn't been made into TV or film, which I would put ahead of reboots of existing stuff any day of the week. I want to see new things on the screen. I want to see things that people have said could never be filmed or just haven't been done. All that sort of stuff. And I'm not looking for. Okay, Wendy says I'm not looking forward to Lord of the Rings from Amazon. So that's what the Second Age stuff, isn't it? That's coming next year. That's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. So. I will definitely watch it. I will definitely give it a chance. But is it? This is the thing, isn't it? So nowadays, I mean, years ago, I remember watching sci-fi and fantasy on screen. I remember thinking it'll never be as good on the telly as it is in my imagination because they just can't do the special effects. And years ago that was true, but obviously since probably about the mid-90s, when was it Jurassic Park was the first movie where they really, really kind of nailed the CGI, enough that you could just look at it and believe it, with the dinosaurs and stuff. And ever since then, it's kind of been a case. Well, the CGI can now do it, basically, can't it? The CGI is good enough to tell any story that we wish to tell. But since then, I feel personally, there's been in a lot of places, there's just been a real lack of pizzazz on the writing. If you want a story that has good characters and twists and turns and interesting things and dilemmas and stuff, go and see a movie that doesn't have much CGI. There doesn't seem to be many places. I mean, there are exceptions, but it doesn't seem to be many places where you can, good CGI and a good story combined. It's either cliche, good CGI, or formulaic plot plus good CGI, or it's domestic stuff with an interesting plot, no CGI. I don't know. That just seems to be a thing. Drew, the 2610 in my name is wedding date. Feel free to pronounce it as 2610. Right, okay. I don't know, you see. This it's just usernames. Chris Viking, hello there. Abana the Wicked, hello. Good to see you as well. So it's going to be so far removed from Tolkien's lore and universe. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is with the Second Age stuff from Tolkien, of course, is presumably it's all based on... apologies, I've got a slight cold. I mean, I'm itching my nose. You can't catch a cold through Twitch, so you'll be fine. But yeah, so I got a slight cold. So if I sniff, and I'm occasionally, because my ears are blocked, so I'm trying to get the... it's horrible. So Second Age, it's the Silmarillion, isn't it? So filming that, and some of the stories in the Silmarillion are quite good, but they're not told with a great deal of storytelling. They're more like almost history recantations of a story. So they went here, they went there, they did this happened, that happened, and then the next story, and it's very kind of ploddy. It's more like a history book, the Silmarillion, and it is a sort of exciting narrative, as you would find in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So they're going to have to, extrapolate a lot around the material of the Silmarillion in order to make it interesting. And virtually all the dialogue they're going to have to think up for whatever the characters say in those things is going to be non-Tolkien, because he didn't write much dialogue for it. So I don't know. If it's done well, it could be really good. If it's done badly, it could be really bad. I suppose that's always the case. Sharknado, bad story plus bad CGI makes for totally hilarious. Yeah, I mean, a film, if it's going to send itself up, I suppose that's going to be good. I don't think anyone has ever made a movie of Rendezvous with Rama, but I kind of hope they never do. Don't think it would translate to film. So those ones would be tough. I mean, I don't know about you, but the Rama books, I only consider the first one to be a Rama book. The other ones are rubbish as far as I'm concerned. I don't like them. I didn't like what Gentry Lee, who worked with Arthur C. Clarke on the second novel? I didn't like what he did with it at all. The first book to me was a kind of masterclass in hard science fiction, but not a character-driven story. The characters were very dull and boring. But that's Arthur C. Clarke. Okay, he doesn't do characterization. He's a hard science fiction kind of a guy, and that's what he does. Whereas Gentry Lee, had them all arguing and doing the sort of things that I would do in a story, but he's not Arthur C. Clarke. And the two were very, very... It's like first gear, crunch into reverse, back in the first gear. Are we using the clutch of this gearbox? No, we're not. I didn't like it at all. So Rendezvous with Rama is the only book in the 4-book series, as far as I'm concerned. There was a nod to the Pern novels in the most recent episode of Lower Decks. Okay, I might have to see if I can catch up with some of those at some point. But I just watched them and thought, this just isn't Star Trek. And maybe I'm just too old. Yeah, maybe that's it. Drew, I referred to Star Trek II Wrath of Khan again. Effects simplistic, but the battles were tense, gritty, and had great... Yeah, so Rob's 2610, let me just get... Yes, you're quite right. I did like... Wrath of Khan, for me, is probably the high point of the entire Star Trek ever, really, because it's got a great baddie who's got a reason to be bad. He's got Kirk, who is... got his own angst and his own demons to deal with in terms of a son that is revealed. He doesn't have a good relationship with. He has to cope with the death of Spock, and he has all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, there's a massively fantastic space battle in it. Even though it's kind of submarines in space, the way it works. But it's got some. It's good. It's good. Yeah, it's really, really good. Kelly Badglass says they can do Tolkien style storytelling. The question is, will they? Yes, I suppose that's true. So Chris says the Silmarillion is more of a history book. Well, it kind of is, isn't it? There are snippets of stories in it. And don't forget the pinnacle of fantasy movie making, Dragon Kingdom. Those desperately bad DVDs. They were awful. I'm just going to be upset if they try and stick Legolas into the Silmarillion in The Hobbit. Because in The Hobbit, which was, I don't know, what, 70 years before Lord of the Rings in the chronology, of course, Legolas is in The Hobbit, isn't he? He looks older than he does in Lord of the Rings. So, apologies if you can hear some thumping. Somebody's gone up in the attic. I don't know what they're doing up there. Obviously decided to try and find something. So there we go. Thank you for the follow there, me video. Do appreciate that. That's really good. Wrath of Khan had a very expensive and groundbreaking CGI sequence. Oh yeah, the Genesis effect. If you watch that bit, it looks awful now, but it was very expensive at the time. Yes. It seemed like Gentry Lee just added the naughty bits to the Rammer books. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, Clark is very matter of fact about people. They have a conversation in order to move the plot along, don't they? They don't. You know, Arthur C. Clarke's characters don't hang out by the water cooler and chat about stuff and have arguments and undermine each other. They're always consummate professionals. They just get on with the problem, or they're the kind of obvious bad guy, and you know they have to be dealt with. So yeah, I don't know. Have I seen the Foundation TV series? No, we've been discussing that. I need to find a way of getting Apple TV, which I haven't got. And that, on that, yeah, a small whinge about that one is like, how am I supposed to keep up with all these wretched streaming services? Because you know, there's Netflix, there's Disney, there's Apple, there's Amazon Prime. There's I've got to have a subscription to all of these. This doesn't make sense. I'm feeding my evil twin in the attic. Yeah, so I don't know what they're doing up there, crunching and banging right above my head. So Legolas is almost 3,000 years old. So why did he age so much in the last 70 years? Dear. Me video, I liked about 10 minutes of The Hobbit, the part in Bilbo's house. Yeah, that's right. I must admit, in The Hobbit, the bits I did like were the bits that were sympathetic to the book. You know, I like the Misty Mountains song, for example. You know, the far over, all that stuff. You know, I thought that was really quite nice. You are saving money on fuel because of the lockdown. You can afford all the streaming services. So, actually, talking about fuel, I've got to get up at stupid o'clock tomorrow to try and get some petrol. Not some petrol, I've actually got to get some diesel for my son's car. I don't need any, but my son soon won't be able to get to work. So he's taking one of our other cars to work tomorrow, so I can take his car to a petrol station, sit for an hour in the dark to get some fuel. I mean, this is the situation the UK now finds itself in. The government has failed at its one most important duty, which is basically keeping the lights on. Just can't get any fuel. It's just insane. What is going on? Kelly Baglav chimes in with a good old Spectrum quote there. Thorin sits down and starts singing about God. Are they rationing fuel? No, they're not rationing fuel at all. What they're doing is they're trying to get the fuel to the fuel stations as per normal, but everybody in the UK has gone completely bananas and is just is panic buying fuel, and so every single petrol station, certainly in my area at the moment, has no fuel until the tankers arrive again. And the moment the tankers arrive, everybody queues up, and you know. There's a massive queue trying to, and then eventually the tanker will run dry again. The problem is that we basically looked at it and went, well, we're not joining stupid queues like that. We don't need fuel yet. We can last a few days without some fuel because we're being sensible. The problem is we will run out of fuel at some point, and then we've got to go and queue. And the problem is that it's not going to get back to normal, so we're having to join and become part of the problem because we actually now need some fuel. I don't know. It's insane. It's insane. Just Drew to pick up on that. Yes, there we go. Well, apparently we've got enough fuel and we've got enough drivers. It's basically completely down to us as individuals, collectively being idiotic by not being able to, ration the way we go and get fuel. I don't know what they are doing up there. I don't normally do things like this while I'm streaming. Apologies for the crunch and bangs you could hear. I had no idea, but there we go. A person is smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals. Yeah, I think you're right. Stupid media, sensationalism, absolutely ridiculous. There is plenty of fuel. So anyway, so what can you do? Anyway, I'm just going to have to put up with it. Anyway, right, it's now 8:30. We must leave the fuel crisis behind us, because you couldn't write rubbish like that, could you? I mean, countries run out of fuel. And yeah, something Brexit. Let's not do politics. That's not what this stream is about. And let's concentrate on the topic du jour, which I put in the tweet actually, which was world building. Okay, and when I say world building, the world is is replaceable by whatever you need it to be. The only reason I thought we could talk about this one this evening is because I'm actually doing it right now. So questions that you have about the process of world building, and I know Glenn's on tonight, so we went through world building, didn't we, Glenn, for a certain anthology book that we actually constructed on this Twitch stream, which is called Night Stream of Consciousness, and Glenn will shortly drop a link to that in the chat. But anyway, I try and give Glenn an opportunity every so often, but I'm doing it again because I need to flesh out the background, if you like, the facts of the new science fiction series that I'm working on, so that is that's something that I'm doing. I'm not expected to drop link every time, so yeah, go for it. It's fine. You are about the only person who's allowed to do that. Special privilege. Me video, may I ask a little about you? I can't find the about. Yeah, of course you can, me video. Yeah, chuck a question in the chat. In fact, if anybody who's new on here tonight, who is not here normally, feel free at any time to drop a question in the chat. The stream is very interactive. That's the idea, really. To do that. So Wintermute says, does world building involve a contract with Magrathea? I'm doing the fjords again, because I happen to like them. Then the sky is exactly the wrong shade of pink right now. I do need to fix that. Not very obscure sci-fi reference, but there we go. And Cyber Derby's here. Evening, Drew. All good. Apart from a lack of fuel, we're all good. Are you making your new Saga collaboration? No, I'm not, Rob's 26 Dead. No, this is me again. So those of you who know me will know I wrote the 4-book Shadewood Saga. Finished that off. Well, finished the book last year. I've done the Audible book this year. But that was a relatively single locale, one planet kind of continent based. It was sort of a fantasy style novel, and I want to get back to doing some proper space opera. So, having constructed quite a lot of a universe for Shadewood, I'm embarking on my next 4-book series, which is going to be called Higara. Which is a 4-book space, well, probably 4 books. I think it's going to be 4, but a 4-book space opera set in the same universe at the same time as my previous work, but in a different locale, if that makes sense. So when do I turn into a white mouse? I want to be a dolphin. I don't want to be the smartest person around. Second smartest will do me. So Homeworld. So it's not quite the same word. So let me just type it in the chat for Lucky Luigi, because that's a good observation. That's the Homeworld one, Higara. Mine's actually is spelt like this. But the name does sound that the name does sound like Homeworld. The reason is. I suppose actually mine should be pronounced Higira. I'm going to have to look up the exact pronunciation to make sure I get it right. But Higira is the trip made by Muhammad back in AD, whenever it was, when he first went to Mecca. So it's a kind of voyage. It's a kind of exodus. It's a kind of long traversing journey. Is basically what that word means. So it's so basically the trouble is now we've got 2 conversations going into the chat, one about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, one about Homeworld, and the two don't really gel. The Magrathea stuff, the references to the white mice and the dolphins are from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Slarty Bartfast is the designer of the replacement Earth. So anybody who gets, and if you don't know what The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is, you need to go and look it up, because that's a classic comedy science fiction story. So is there a Shadewood crossover? Yes, there is. There's prospects of crossover. So the idea being that the planet in Shadewood was settled by part of an expansive generation ship program at some point in the distant past. Gen ships went to other places. Okay, so all those other worlds need some fleshing out, and that's basically where I'm at the moment with the construction of my science fiction novel. Is that I'm trying to work out what the background exactly is. And so I've started on this one with a timeline. Okay, now I like timeline. Timeline's kind of quite cool and fun. And it's a case of sticking dates on things and working out the key events that have brought you to where your story starts. So what I like to do is I like to write a story from a story has to start somewhere, right? When you open book 1, page 1, something starts. Okay, it's usually, if your writer's kind of following the usual writing book, it's something really, really exciting that grabs you for the first few pages, so you basically get into the book. So typical writing 101 stuff is something exciting has to happen fairly quickly for you to get on the side of probably one of the main characters. And kind of then hook you into the rest of the book. Okay, so but that's the actual main story. Stories don't exist in a vacuum, but well, the space ones do, obviously, but you know what I mean. What was I saying? Yeah, stories don't exist in a vacuum. Yeah, so something has to have happened before the story started. There had to be a whole series of events. Maybe your protagonist is quite old. Like me. They have a history. What happened to them before the point at which your story opens? Now, you don't necessarily have to go to that sort of stuff in detail, but you do need to have some idea of what occurred before, so that occasionally you may want to reference the historical event from the perspective of the characters that you're now talking about, so that they can look back on things. Tolkien did this. He had the first age and the second age, and then the third age, which is when The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings were set. And the second age and the third age, he kind of worked out all of the stuff so that he could refer to it. So even in The Hobbit, you see references to Gondolin and various other places that are not really expanded at all in The Hobbit. But they are referenced from the source material that he did as kind of his world building stuff. And Tolkien probably spent more time on the world building than he did on the actual story, but get the balance right. So Lucky Roots. Hegira is actually an exodus and not a homewards journey. Yes, so I think Hegira. I think I'm right in saying it's a long journey is the official definition of that word. So I've used that. Now I'm not sure if the guys who wrote Homeworld and named the Homeworld Higara use the same source name or not. I've got a feeling they didn't, actually, and I think the similarity may just be a coincidence, but I don't really mind that because I liked Homeworld. And it was an excellent game. Earth what's that called? Earth exists in a vacuum, says Glenn. Very good. So that's quite good. What do you think about Ursula K. Le Guin, who starts at the beginning of it and quickly tells you the story of the protagonist's whole life? It's her sort of style. I like Ursula Le Guin stuff, actually. I do enjoy her storytelling. It's not something I like to do. I like you to find out about a character, piecemeal, bit by bit. I don't think I've ever done a quick summary of somebody's life at the beginning of the story. That's just not the way I write. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If it works and if it's a style that you have, because there's this thing, the writer's voice, and once you've read a few of somebody's books, you'll kind of tune into the way they write, and unless they are deliberately trying to write something very different to something before, you'll get a familiarity with the way they write and the sort of stuff that they tell. I fully intend to be familiar and not try and trip you up with different styles. But that's just me. Some authors will play with that, of course, and they're like, I'm going to do this in a different way, just to trip you up. But I don't. And Ursula Le Guin is very, very good storyteller. So she's definitely an inspiration as far as I'm concerned. For me, she's up there with Anne McCaffrey and Elizabeth Moon and some of the other people like that who are really, really quite. I will always enjoy their stuff because I know it'll be quite a treat to read. She's right up there with Asimov and Clarke and all that sort of stuff. Even Tuscan. We know we picked up on Maru. Poor old Maru. Alas, Maru's story is over. At least I think it's over. You never know. Maybe something else happened to poor Maru. Maybe there's more suffering in the afterlife. In the UK, did they exist in the Hoover? No. Actually enough, I don't know nowadays whether people. I still talk about hoovering the house, which of course is wrong because Hoover's a brand name. But a Hoover to me, as a child, was the machine that you push around the house which made noise, and your mum used to sing along to while she was cleaning. So that's a Hoover as far as I'm concerned. So I actually do have a Dyson, upright vacuum cleaner, but I still refer to it as the Hoover. So. Weird, because a Hoover sounds like that's the thing. It's a Hoover, right? It's not a Hoover. It's just a Hoover. So different authors will have a different way of approaching the way that they bring their characters in. Some of them will basically say, this is this person. Others will basically just give you. As I did, if you read the first chapter of Shadewood, it's basically one character just having a really bad day, and that's all you get. You get an impression of what's going on before, but you don't get any details until much later on. You get that, and you can put together the life story, maybe 2 or 3 books into the entire sequence, but you don't get it up front. That's me, and that's not right or wrong. That's just a style. But regardless of what you're doing, you've got to, whether you're going to give the story there and then, or whether you're going to spread it out across the books, you've got to figure it out in advance. Okay, so this is just from a character perspective. Okay, so take a character. What happened to them before the story started? How old are they when their story starts? Let's say they are 25 for sake of argument. Okay, so they've got 25 years of life before they got to this point in the story. What have they been doing? What were they doing as a child? Did they have a nice upbringing? Did they have a bad upbringing? What formative experiences did they go through to be the character they are when they're 25, when the story starts? Okay, now you don't need to go into the nth degree and write an entire essay on this, but you need to have some design to those characters to make them fleshed out. Because if there's something that happened to them as a child, their childhood experiences will relate into the person they are when they grow up. Okay, so if they've had an abusive childhood or a happy childhood, if they've had a lonely childhood or lots and lots of people around them, that's going to influence the sort of person they are when they come to 25. And you need to, I personally feel, you need to pick up on those sorts of things and then make sure you reference them when they're 25. When they're 25, they lack a bit of confidence, or they're self-conscious, or they're introverted, or they're aggressive, or they're assertive, or they're bossy, or they're arrogant. All those sorts of things must have a stem from somewhere. And if you can plot the character's sort of life story overall, I think it makes for a more believable character in the first instance, and somebody that people can kind of get alongside to. So there you go. Star Dragon Rider says, you've written books for ED. Do you intend to write something in about No Man's Sky, or have you given it a thought? I haven't really given it any serious thought. Having played No Man's Sky quite extensively for last week, I'm not convinced it's the sort of game that actually would, a book would really work for, because its lore is very sort of, epic. It's very, very high level, and there's not there is I suppose you could write a flow through on the Atlas path or the Artemis thing. You could kind of draw those into a story and maybe canonize a movement through the movement through the game. I don't think I'd be very good at that, to be honest, because my stories are character based, and there aren't, I suppose Artemis is and Atlas are kind of characters, but I need a cast of adventurers to go on a quest and do stuff, and that's not quite what No Man's Sky is. So I don't know. Nothing jumps out to me immediately as a sci-fi author from No Man's Sky. I'm thinking to myself that needs to be turned into a book, because I'm not quite sure how I'd approach it. So I don't know. Tricky one, that one. Chris Fox says I had an in medias res start originally. Not quite sure what you mean by that. But I think I'm going to move it a little further into the book with a little build-up, because I feel it needs a bit of build-up to the initial payoff to make my main character not seem unreasonable. I'm writing a prologue instead that starts with the character as a young person. Okay, so that, a lot of people will say, oh, don't do prologues, No, I like prologues because they kind of set a bit of a scene. I quite like that. So again, do what you think is right for your story. But yeah, I think sometimes, I've used prologues, you've probably seen them in Shea, but I've used prologues to set a sort of distant world view of the universe. So in my prologues, whereas chapter 1 starts with character having a bad time on the ground, lots of detail, the prologue is kind of the sort of million-mile view. There is a planet. We found it in the darkness and we colonized it, and then things went wrong. The prologue is sort of almost the epic narrator voice, kind of setting the scene, and the chapter 1 is again right down the detail. Chris Viking says in media res is a term used for when your story starts in the middle of events. Okay, sorry, that's I think I did know that actually, reading it back, but you're quite right, Chris. That's good. Winnie 1964. I think Drew enjoys killing characters. Well, my view on that. I mean, I'm not. I don't think I'm quite in George R.R. Martin's league on that one. But death is a perfectly acceptable thing to happen to characters, I think. I don't agree with doing it for the shock value. So, if someone's going to die in one of my stories, it has to be. I will have considered it quite carefully. I'm not just going to. I'm going to kill off the favourite character because evil laugh. I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's right that your main characters can kind of have, super plot armor because they're the main characters. I don't think it's not realistic, is it? Bad things can happen, accidents can happen, tragedies can just occur. Sometimes death can be meaningless. That's a reality of life. Now, again, depending on the type of story that you're writing, that may not be what you're trying to do. But if you're writing a upbeat kind of classic adventure quest, then maybe your main characters can't die because they're the main characters. But Tolkien killed off a few main characters. A few people died. Sean Bean, obviously. I mean, he dies in everything, doesn't he? But you know what I mean. But so characters, I think, even main leading characters shouldn't be invincible. Because otherwise there's no element of risk in the story. If the character can't, I mean, that's one thing that I've read a couple of Clive Cussler novels, and I don't really like Clive Cussler novels, but I ended up with one on an airplane flight, and I read it, and actually it was quite good fun. And then I got another one. I had two of them. I can't remember some reason, and the thing that wound me up is I immediately clocked that the main guy, I think is it Dirk Pitt? I think it's Dirk Pitt. Kind of all-American action hero kind of guy. He's kind of James Bond on steroids, really. But I quickly clocked on that the guy couldn't die. Okay, no matter what was going to happen, he'd always figure a way out of it. Okay, so you can jump from book to book to book with Clive Cussler, and Dirk Pitt can never die. It's just invincible. And once you know he's invincible, then you're just going, okay, so what contrived method is Clive Cussler going to go up to save this guy's skin this time around? It's just there's no suspense. It's just a kind of, okay, he will outwit them at some point because he's Dirk Pitt. And I don't like that. I don't think that's good writing, really. That's sort of pulp writing almost. So in my series, if you're a main character, it's not an invincibility spell. You can die. Now, whether you die meaningfully, or whether you die accidentally, or whether you just die of old age, or you die of sickness, is entirely up to my twisted evil mind. But I feel that's a bit more realistic. Now, I'm not trying to, like I say, I feel certainly the TV adaptation of Game of Thrones was a little bit too much shock value. It's basically, let's take a major character everybody's beginning to root for, and oh, they're dead. No, I don't like that. There was too much main character death for me, and a lot of it was very, it was. It's just too gory for me. I kind of, and there was lots of other things about Game of Thrones that I didn't like. I thought the nudity and the sex scenes were way too over the top for what was actually required, and it took such a long time to get anywhere. I mean, these people are just plodding around or whatever. What's the landscape of Game of Thrones called? Can't remember now, but it's just an awful lot of walking around. And it's just that you could probably compress that entire story into a couple of seasons. It would have worked. Or chopped in half by barbarians, yes, all that sort of stuff. So all those sort of things. But my take on it is that main characters should be able to be killed by events that happen in the story, because otherwise there's no risk for them. If they do stupid things, then sometimes there should be consequences for those stupid things, I feel. Or if they just genuinely make a mistake. Westeros, that was it, well done. All that west verbose. So those sort of things. So that's the characters. I think you should spend, as a writer, I would recommend spending a bit of time working out who your character is, obviously at the point where the story starts, but what happened to them to make them the person they are at the point the story starts. So, I mean, take an example from Shadewood. The first person you encounter in Shadewood is a girl called Kiri. She, at the time the story opens, she is about 18 years old. And she's, in chapter 1, all you get to see her do is run away from some people who are trying to kill her. Because she's basically stolen some stuff. Okay, so she steals some stuff. She runs away from the people she's stolen from. They try to kill her because rough justice, and she kind of almost gets away with it, and then doesn't get away with it because she actually gets caught, and then somebody intervenes. End of chapter 1. All you figured out really about her life story at that point is that she's clearly some sort of vagabond urchin girl who's just on the run, and she's living off subsistence by stealing stuff. So clearly she's not had the best of childhoods. But that's the first impression you get. Her language is coarse. She doesn't look very nice. She's covered in dirt. She's dressed in rags, etc., etc., etc. So obviously had some kind of really tough upbringing. But she's also clearly a survivor. She's able to manage that. So you kind of get that first impression about the kind of person that she is. Now, I had, long before I wrote chapter 1, worked out who Kiri was and all the things that happened to her up until the point of chapter 1, but it's not in the book at that point. So that's my document for going, who is she, for me writing the story. Now I'm going to do that again for the characters I put in my next book, and that just fleshes out the type of thing. Now I think personally that's a really worthwhile thing to do, because I think it makes for more believable characters, because you have to then work with the constrictions you've placed on yourself as the sort of person that they are. So, for example, Kiri can never, certainly early on, can never be nice. Because she sees the lens through, want that, must have it, otherwise going to die, so I'm going to stab you. That's the sort of person she is. And that's because that's the life she's led. She hasn't known anything else, so she can't suddenly be empathetic. And go, you know what, I'm just going to chill and let you do whatever, because she can't. That's not who she is. So things like that are important for consistency and other sort of stuff. If you go then onto the wider thing, okay, so if a character has a backstory, okay, so where did they have that backstory in? Are they in the same place as when the story started, or did they come from somewhere else? Where is that somewhere else? How do you get from the somewhere else to the current place? What sort of transport is available? What sort of landscape is it? What's the weather like? What's the general lay of the land? All those sorts of things. You start needing to pull back from some of these events. Now you can start, quite rightly with, you're doing your world building at the landscape level, and I've done that. I love drawing maps, for example. Maps I think are really, really good. I might do that, or I might do, as I've started with this one, by necessity really, a timeline of events. So I've gone back to effectively today, so 2021, and then gone forward, working out significant events that have occurred in my universe of stuff, to the point at which my new story is going to start. And then in between then and kind of now, because it's obviously in the future in this case, is all the significant events have a date stamp against them, and not much detail, maybe a paragraph or two, and it's basically a big Excel spreadsheet, and I'm slowly filling in all the gaps of all the significant events. So I've worked out what the significant events are going to be, and then across all the different star systems I have, and I think I've got 27, so it's going to take me a while. I'm going to work out all the significant events that happen to all those star systems in sequence against the timeline. Now, I find Excel quite good at this because I can put all the dates down the left-hand column. I can put all the planetary systems across the right. And, and then the cells in between become the events in those particular areas. So I can then filter by and do all sorts of clever stuff like that, which is, that works for me. I quite like Excel spreadsheets for that sort of thing. So there we go. Chris Viking says, I always thought Westeros was a fun name because in Sweden we have a city called, I'm going to pronounce that Westeros as well. And the name sounds similar. Okay, that's quite cool. Slow reveal of how they became the person they were in the first scene as you learn their background. So that's how I do it, Glenn. That doesn't say that's the only way of doing it, but that's certainly how I do it. JL, on an administrative note, how do you deal with your documents on world building? Mine are in constant danger of becoming entirely unwieldy for my zoo. I do structure them. I think I've talked about this before, so I can show you one actually. Let me pop up my, because it's seriously out of date now. Well, not out of date. It's just not used. So I won't do a shade word one because there's still some people out there who haven't read them, and it's kind of like spoilers. But I'm going to go for my original Elite Dangerous book, which is now ancient. That's 2014. So if you haven't read that by now, where have you been? Let me just go to screen and camera. There we go. So where is my plot? Is it plot and approval? There we go. So this is how I do it. Okay, I'll zoom it up a little bit for size. So over here you can see I've got a whole bunch of, I don't know if that's going to show up too. Let me make this, can I make that font a bit bigger? Don't think I can. Don't know. Sorry about that. So anyway, so I'll talk you through it. So basically I write a lore guide, I call them, kind of an overview document of the book that I'm writing. So so it starts with a summary, anything I need to do. Okay, and then a bit of background. What's going on? What are the main themes? Then I start with where, in this case, were there political considerations? Yes, there were. What technology is going on? What sort of stuff is happening? How does it work? What are the people like? Are there factions? Are there political structures? Are there races? Are there affiliations? What do people believe? All that sort of stuff. This is locations. This is a sci-fi novel, so I've kind of drawn a picture of a star system, roughly how it works, where they are, what their names are, a few characteristics of that sort of thing. Anything else that's going on? Other systems that are referenced in the story. So you can see here, I didn't go into much detail for the different systems because I didn't need to. I just said this is the nearest significant world that's aligned to, in this case it was an empire. Okay, that's it. That's all I needed. There's a star map. Okay, so here's this was long before Elite Dangerous actually had a star map. The game didn't exist, so I had to make it all up. So this is roughly how I thought the map would look like, and roughly where things were. So I just plotted it out and drew it myself. Anything that needs to happen, some spaceships. There are various different ships. They all have different names. Write them down. That's how I can refer to them accurately. A few pronunciations. This was for when it was being recorded as an audio book. How do you pronounce this to work? And then I went on. This is the character stuff. So this is relatively early. So one of the characters. I mean, you'll know Salome. Those of you who followed Elite Dangerous, you'll know Salome. So I've done I went on various websites to get some clip art and things like that, to kind of try and find the sort of person I thought that she would look like, and then use that as a basis for the descriptions I use. So dark hair with grey eyes, distinguishing features. She has a strong kind of face, but she's not super beautiful. Her sisters are nicer looking than she is, so maybe there's an issue there. She forms snap judgments and acts on them, making many mistakes as a result. She's aggressive and sharp-tongued, considered arrogant and intolerant by many. Okay, so she's not particularly nice. What's happened to her? This is a bit of her family history. So all this stuff happens, and there's lots of other people here. There's another guy. Lots of about a page each I've basically done on these sort of things, and just to get into my head what the characters are like. Okay, was Adjective the nod to Lords of Midnight? It was. So yeah, a lot of my works have a reference to whatever the next thing is in them, so you kind of get a clue as to what's coming up. And this document is never designed to be consumed by readers. Okay, so there would be major spoilers in this. Okay, so this is not something that you would use in your book. Okay, this is your research document. And I've just constructed it like this. The reason I find it works, and I may be a bit old school here because I like Word and I like Excel. Okay, now that may not be your tool of choice, and if you're on a different computer like an Apple or something, you may be using a completely different system. The reason I do it like this is I can simply use, and you can probably see I've done it here. Let's go back to the top here, character bios. So if I start with heading 1, and then here I go. This is heading 3 in this case, and this one is heading 2. Word automatically gives me some indented subject headings here. Okay, now I find that really useful because I can basically scroll up and down this and go, so what my significant minor character Corrine, boom, and it's kind of hyperlinked straight there. So that's how I did that. So it just allows me to navigate really quickly through my document. So it's trying to avoid that unmaintainability. Okay, I need Tenim the Saver. What's he all about? Okay, there he is. Right, I can just add a little bit more in there now, and so on and so forth. So basically, I have all my major characters here and all my relatively minor characters here, with a little bit of stuff about them so I know what they do. That's how I do it. Okay, I keep it structured in a single document that I can basically navigate up and I use the navigation mechanism in Word to quickly find my way around. Glenn says, my problem with world building is planning. I start in one document but then start writing down new ideas. So I just have one document. I think that's the way I put everything into one document, so I can collapse it if I need to, like this, and go, okay, so today I'm going to work on the spaceships. Okay, or today I'm going to work on the politics. Okay, and I can quickly get to the thing that I've got the idea for. All right, and then actually I've just had this really good idea for politics, and I'm just going to type it in there. And that's how I do it. I keep it in one document that I can then move up and down quite quickly. And then I work on the backstory and synopsis and those other bits and pieces. So I do have a backstory. That's what happens before the story. Okay, so here's a short piece of text basically that explains what happens before the story opens, immediately before the story opens, so I can segue from that straight into the story. Would Sean Bean play Maru? I hope not. Poor old Sean Bean. Glenn said, Chris I was trying to figure out how Dru-ids, and I figured out if we use headings and heading index on the side, that would actually help a lot. So that's how I do it. Now, what I do is I tend to use this nowadays as a sort of pro forma. So I start off with all this sort of stuff here and just leave it blank, and then I go in and fill it out as things occur to me, because I find when I'm being creative I can't just right from the start and go to the end. I have to go, oh, I've got an idea for one of my minor characters. Let's just go and fill in the so-and-so person, and I'll go in there. Okay, and then I'll fill that out. So I don't write this document from start to finish. I go into it at different points and complete it out. That's kind of how I do it. But I do have a structure, as you can see, for what I do. And then a bit of information. Now, Al Greb-Loren here, for example, has about, I don't know, 10 lines in Elite Reclamation. He's got one scene where basically he has an argument with Salome Kahina, and that's it. That's the only time he appears before he gets killed. But basically that's who he is, and I needed that so I could write him correctly, if that makes sense. So there we go. So yes, Zanjakith was a nod. I must admit, Zanjakith. Where was Zanjakith? Zanjakith was up here. I think it's one of the ships. Yeah. So there we go. One of the ships. There it is. Federation capital ships. Names of major capital ships: Zanjakith for the Federal and Atticus Imperial. So Zanjakith was a nod there to Lords of Midnight in my Elite Reclamation book. So ta-da, ZX Spectrum owners, huzzah! So we go. Mad Monk's off. Did you pay royalties for the pictures? Yes, I do. Because if I'm going to use something like this one, which if you go to, I think Shutterstock, I think I got this one from, you'll find this picture used quite a lot, but I just liked it. But if I'm going to use a picture, then I do buy the royalties for it. I think that's important because if, so you'll notice these are good quality images there, and they haven't got like some sort of watermark across them. I don't know why I'm doing that when you can't see my hand. There it is. There. I'm going to open hand. Doing that's a good movement, is it? So I do buy the royalties for the images I use. I am a very image focused writer. I find images, particularly of people, actually really, really useful to kind of get a feel. So what I'll do is I'll browse a site like Shutterstock or any of the other kind of stock image places, looking for somebody who I think looks like my character in my head. Okay, so for example, this is kind of what I thought Salome looked like. Now you may have a different image of her, and that's fine, because this is how I thought she looked. And I'll use that image as a defining way of making sure, okay, and I'll look at that image and go, that image is grabbing me, I like that image, okay. And then I'll riff off the image. So Kahina is dark-haired with grey eyes. She's of average height and build. Her features are strong and memorable, but a shade away from beautiful and considered next to her older sisters. Okay, so that's the description that I got from the image that I thought is matching up with how I feel she is in my head as a character. If you go down to Hassan here, he's kind of a, he's a bit of a wide boy. He's a chancer. He's quite self-conscious, but he's actually hiding a deep level of insecurity. All that sort of stuff. He's trying to be the big man, but he's not quite there, kind of stuff. By contrast, Dolk here is a consummate professional, knows how to kill people. He's been there, done that, all that sort of stuff. And I was looking for images for those kind of things. And if I go into my file system, I think you'll find I've got the original still there. Let me have a look. Elite Dangerous, Elite Reclamation, high res, I think it was. There we go, high res artwork. So here are all the artworks that I downloaded. So for example, there's the original image for Dolk that I got, and I thought, and that is a stock image. Okay, I don't know who that guy is, but I love the image of a guy in a trench coat. He's bald, he's stern, he's standing there in the rain with a big gun, and he looks like he means business. Okay, and I thought that's just brilliant. Now there is actually a scene in Elite Reclamation which is exactly that image, because that image was to me powerful enough to just get the point across. Okay, so if you know Elite Reclamation, there's a scene where Kahina and Hassan are trying to escape from Dolk at a starport, and a storm is coming across the starport just as they're trying to get onto the ship and get away, and basically Dolk corners them getting onto the ship as the rain starts coming down, and basically Hassan falls to the floor. There's a scene where Dolk is pointing his gun at him, That's that image, okay? Now that's how I do it. This may not work for you as a writer, but I find that images are really, really, really good for me to go, yes, that's that. I want to write that. I've kind of got a almost like a TV movie playing in my head as I'm imagining the scene. Like going, I know that's the detail. That's the detail. So little stuff like the rain coming down so hard that it's splashing off his clothing and splashing off the gun. He's looking down his nose. He's looking down his arm. The gun is pointing straight down. All those sort of little details. His fingers on the trigger ready, and he's just about to blow you away. Okay. So that sort of stuff is really important. Here's another one that I got for Kahina, which is just she's posh. All right. She's kind of imperial, high-ranking lady of the empire, so she's used to the trappings of wealth and privilege and money, and she looks down at the common people. Okay, that's the kind of person she is. She is used to having power and influence, and she doesn't think anything of it. So I wanted that sense of opulence when I was writing her. So when you read about Kahina, she will have arrogance, she will have snobbery, she will have upper class kind of mannerisms, because this is the source material. Okay. And this one I used for Octavia Quinton. Okay, so she's actually a woman who is very determined, very focused. She's coming to terms with older age as well, and she doesn't like it. Okay, she wants to be young again, and all those sort of things. So those are the sort of things I'm getting out of these images. And then there's various efforts. I don't always get the same one, but I saw this one, and it's not the same model, but I thought, a sword. Maybe Kahina can have a sword. And then I was looking through the Elite Dangerous lore, thinking there are swords in Elite Dangerous. There's a rare good you can actually buy called a Holver blade. I thought, well, there you go, boom, sword. And then I had to think to myself, why would somebody in the 34th century be carrying a sword? And then maybe it's it's an ornamental thing, it's a rank thing, and all that sort of stuff. So I built a little bit of lore around that sort of stuff. So that's how I do it. That's how I do it. And in Shadewood, I did very similar stuff. Let's have a look. See if I've got a few of those bits and pieces. Artwork. So I start with some artwork. So this is actually a picture I took of a niece of mine sitting in. This was actually in a castle in Luxembourg, and she was just sort of sitting in the window, nice picture. And then I played around with it a bit, and I sort of darkened it. I thought, well, that in some ways that would work perfectly as a kind of she's an urchin girl sitting in the window looking out over this strange red dwarf lit planet. And so I changed the colouring a bit to sort of muck about with it. And then I kind of had a young Kiri, maybe, just as a kind of inspirational image. So that's sometimes you can even take your own pictures and they work. Then other bits of artwork, just general stuff. This is a nice one, just a CGI'd red dwarf, just to kind of give me a feel of the star system, all that sort of stuff. And then here's another one that I took of that I found on Shutterstock, which is a kind of Kiri inspiration. Okay, so this is now dark hair and blue eyes. I tend to focus on hair and eyes. It's just one thing I do in terms of description. So those sort of things all sort of started working quite well. This one was an early one that I didn't actually use ultimately. I quite like the idea of, she's a bit too smartly dressed really, but I quite like the idea of a young woman with a sword standing in the rain. I never actually used that, but it was quite a good image that kind of gave me the idea of, okay, she's tough and she's quite prepared to stab you through the heart with a sword should the need arise. So things like this is how I started. It is kind of storyboarding, I suppose. That's kind of how I did it. So that's basically I construct all this sort of stuff. Now the other thing that I do is I do the backstory. So the backstory is what happened just before the main story. Hassan in my mind. You said this is interesting. Actually, looking at the comments now, I'm just kind of catching up. Shutterstock and Live Photo, good sources for images that you pay for use. The fees aren't too bad. I mean, there are different licensing models. yeah, I'll quickly show you the Shable one at a high level in a bit, just so you can have a look at that. But yeah, so I find imagery very good. That's me. But yeah, so man versus pictures, you're quite right. People who have inspired me do get mentioned in these sort of things. So that's that. You know, those sort of things do happen. That's quite important. All those bits and pieces. So that's sort of that. Now the other thing is, so the backstory is basically what happened immediately before the story. So I've written about, this is a lead recommendation, I've written about a page and a half, so it's not a huge amount, but basically it says, the few years just before the main story, what was going on that caused the main story to actually happen, and that's kind of what that is. Then there's the synopsis. This is like as close as possible. It's not. This isn't a very good synopsis actually, because it's supposed to be one page if you can make it, and that's a good thing to be able to do if you can put a synopsis onto one page, because quite often a publisher or an agent will need that in order to sell your story. It's basically the really, really short version of what happens in your story. So if you can condense down your story into one page of A4, that's a synopsis. And it has to be completely just, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens. No dialogue, no nothing in there. Just this happens, 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 then this is the end of the story. So that's what a synopsis is. That's a useful thing to have for lots of reasons. Not least sometimes working out if you've got any plot holes, because sometimes you can read about and go, well, hang on a minute, how did I get from that paragraph to that paragraph? That can be quite interesting. Then what I have is a detailed plot. Okay, so I take the synopsis and then expand it with all the detail. Okay, so detailed plot. The year is 3300. This is almost, the scrolling thing on Star Trek, it's on Star Wars at the beginning, it's that sort of style. Concerned at the excesses of Senator Algrib Loren, Luke Skywalker. No, it's not like that. But it's it's that sort of thing. This is a bit more exciting to read than the synopsis. Okay, this has got a bit of emotion in it. This has got the good and the bad and the up and the down, and this, that, and the other sort of stuff. And what I do is you can't see it here, but what I do is I basically say, right, I'll do that, and I'll go to maybe there in one thing. I'll go, right, I've written that, and I'll go, boom, done. Okay, so I actually use this as a program management sort of thing. I colour in the bits I've done, and that keeps me on target. But it also allows me to go, this bit here, I don't fancy writing that at the moment. I fancy writing this bit. And so I'm going to do that bit, and I'll stick it into my actual manuscript at the time, and do it that way. So that's kind of how it allows me to work. So this is a structure that works for me, and I'm I think I've got a blank version of it as a Word document with nothing in it. Now, if that's useful to you, I can make that available to folks, either via the Discord or something. It's just a mechanism that I've found very useful to plot out my stuff. Now, as I've said many times on this stream before, I am a plotter, okay, as opposed to a pantster. Now, pansters, I'm actually in awe of pansters, that they can actually write a book that is coherent without doing apparently any planning at all. And I'm just like, how do you do that? Because I can't. If I tried to pantster a book, it would just become a complete. I'd just write myself into a corner within a couple of chapters. I just can't do it because. I would get something wrong, and I'd have to rewrite things, and I hate rewriting things because I just don't. So I spend a lot of time on a detailed plot, trying to make sure that the thing works from beginning to end. Me video Discord. Sorry, I haven't got any of those automated thingamajigs working, so apologies for that. Let me just go and get my Discord, and I'll dump a link in the chat. And I can upload it there after the event. Hang on a minute. Because I can never remember how to do this. I should get a bit more clever than this. Let me just go and do that. Right. There we are. I'm just going to stick that into the chat. There we go. So there's my Discord. Feel free to join that. There is a channel there called... Let me just find out what it's called. It's down under other topics, and you'll see... well, where am I going to put it? I should have a writing. I'm going to let's put a new channel just called writing. There we go. There, so I'll there's a new thing, and I'll put all those kind of useful tools in there. There we go. There's nothing there at the moment, but feel free to jump in. I'll stick some bits and pieces of useful stuff in there in a bit. So I'm a plotter. I need to work out the detail of what's going on to make sure I don't make any mistakes. So in this plot, you'll see everything. Okay, so and yeah, it's complete spoiler territory. Again, so this is not a document I would normally share with my readers, because this is the ins and outs of how the novel works, it's got all the plot twists articulated in it. It's got all the surprises articulated in it. So it would be a very bad thing for a reader to see before they'd read the book, because then there would be no surprise. Okay, so the idea is that this is the detail, so I can put all the twists in. So for example here, Dolk and the other patrons, realising the current situation is untenable, put together a plan to allow the system to collapse in a controlled fashion and frustrate the ambitions of the Federation proxy so they may benefit from the outcome. They intend to bring Algreb's young daughter, Kahina, into a position of power and control the system through her as a puppet ruler. Okay, that's what's happening in the story, but you as the reader don't know that at this point in time. Okay, so I know that because it's in the plot, but you don't know that at this stage because it hasn't happened yet. Okay, so that's the important distinction. And for example here, so unknown to the other patrons, Dolk has his own agenda. All right. And I could also say unknown to the reader at this stage, Dolk has his own agenda. Okay, so all that sort of stuff. Yeah, he's got an agenda, and this is his agenda. Okay, and that's not, you wouldn't say that if you were writing a book. You know, you've got to keep it secret because it's, oh no, he's been revealed to be this, that, and the other. Whereas in this detailed plot, all the twists are articulated. So I'm making sure, I hope, that my twists work and that they're logical. Okay. And everything else basically happens. So there's this absolute major spoiler territory if you haven't read the book. Okay, all this sort of stuff, and that is quite a detailed thing. You can see that runs for 5. There we go, 5 pages. Okay, it's quite a lot. That's the entire plot of that book in detail. And then I've got more imagery. Okay, so this is sort of space stuff. Okay. Planets and things doing things, as you would expect for a kind of sci-fi novel. Now you may be wondering about the Shable one. Let me show you the Shable one. I won't show you the detail because of spoilers, but if we do, and look, there's the current work in progress. I can't show you that one over. There's Doomdark's Revenge up the top there. So yeah, there you go. There's the first pages of that. That's all in there as well, but that's definitely spoilers because that hasn't been done. So I'm not showing you that. Because that book isn't out yet. Let me show you the Shadewood one. Shadewood Saga. Where is it? Oh, it's down here. There we go. Shadewood Saga background and detail. Okay. No, that's not the right file. Open there. Need to go back up. Up. There we go. There we go. Done the wrong one. Okay, so here again you can see the stuff down the sides. This one I've got different types of plants. There's the flora, there's the fauna, there's the occupations, all the different types of trade activity. Then there's technology, there's measurements because I had to invent different measurements. There is words and sayings, there's the overall plot, there's the main characters, there's the secondary characters, and so here is what I've done here is this is book 1. This is the story of Shadewood, again told in detail, but I've put all the books in here, so you don't just have one book in here, you've got all the books because they all share the same lore and the same background, the same timeline. What I've done is I wrote the original story from beginning to end, the entire thing at a high level kind of plot summary sort of level, and then I chopped it up into 4 books. Initially 5, but as it turned out, I needed 4. And so that is the, I'm going to scroll past really fast because spoilers. That is the entirety of Shadewood. You can see there's some bits that I coloured in when I was writing. That is the entirety of Shadewood in detail, and that's basically the way I do it. So this is the system I use in order to get the world building in. I do play around with maps as well, but I'd like to write quite a lot of background lore and detail. So those documents, I mean, if you looked at Shadewood, how big was that? To give you an idea on size, it is, when it finally tells me, 17,000 words. Okay, 17,000 words. So that's a couple of dissertations. That's pretty much a novella that I've written for myself in order to make my books work. Okay, so 17,000 there for Shadewood. And just out of curiosity, let's have a look at how big is the Doomdogs one, just out of curiosity. This one's in some ways, it's not quite so big maybe. No, okay, so Doomdogs is about 5,000 because it's only a single book. Okay, how big was Reclamation? That one's probably a bit longer. Boom, okay, so 9,000 words. Okay, that's the sort of amount of detail I'm going into. The reason the Doomdogs one is shorter is because there's actually a lot more lore available to me elsewhere, and I didn't have to write it down again. So, I'm lucky that I've got the pre-existing lore. Whereas Shadewood, I had to invent everything, which is why Shadewood is a bit more detailed. Now, I expect the Higara stuff to be about 20,000 words, and I try and do as much of that as possible before I actually start writing the actual story that I'm hoping to turn into a book and ultimately sell. Okay, so I try and do all the background in advance, and I play around with it. I go to bed thinking about, what about this and what about that, and then in the morning I go and make a tweak to the plot document. I should blur it when I put that. I think it's probably okay. You realise we can pause it? Yeah, I know, but yeah, it's not that bad. There's not too much in the way of spoilers in there. And the Doomdogs one, you only saw the first screen, so there you go. It's not going to give you anything away that's useful. But yeah, so what I do is early on, I just let my imagination keep flowing. Oh, what about that? Oh, great idea for a character. Let's put that character in and then see if we can develop it. So I'm constantly going in and out of that document. For the first few weeks and months of my novel writing time, I'm going in and out of that document a lot, just going, I've had this idea. So I'm sort of, that's where I'm, it's my initial round of being very creative. Let's have a planet that does that. And I'd love to write a scene whereby this happens. So let's have a planet that's like this. Maybe there's a spaceship like that. And maybe there's, depending on what I'm writing, maybe there's some magic that can do this. That would be a cool scene. Maybe there's there's a creature that does that. All that sort of stuff. So I do all that sort of creative stuff, and then I just dump it into that format, which means I can go back and then iterate on it multiple times and just slowly go cohesive. And then I'll have ideas for the plot, and then I'll bang those in, and I'll write a paragraph. I go, that's a really nice scene. Can I use that? Does that work somewhere else? Can I connect it up? And I go through that plot multiple times over many weeks, going, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Would they do that? How can I get to there with because is that a natural outcome of what's already happened? And I just keep going through it until I feel the plot makes sense, that it's logical, that there's a progression, that if something happens, it happens for a compelling reason, that it makes sense, that it works in that sort of order. And I do that a lot. So that document for me is incredibly important. It becomes my Bible for writing the actual book. So it's I spend an awful lot of time. Some people may say, well, that's just ridiculous. That's like writing another book, and it kind of is. But I'm not working to a particular deadline here. I'm just wanting to write a particular story in the time that I do. So so that is that's kind of the structure that I use, and I find that really invaluable, because I can just go back to it anytime and go, what's the thing? What's the thing? What happens next? What does it look like? Oh yeah, it's done one of them, isn't it? I've just had an idea for an extra one of those. I'll put that in as well. And I just Because sometimes when I'm working on the story, I get to a point where I go, I can't do any more narrative today. I'm going to go and do some lore. So I go and build a new creature or a new spaceship or a new, magic spell or something. And I can just go in there and be creative for a bit in a different way to writing the story. And sometimes, the switch between those two contexts is actually quite useful. And so all of that stuff then comes together, and you hit a certain point where the place begins to feel real, like it actually works, like it's a real place that you could go visit and you go, yeah, I know how that works because that's the thing, and those are the things I'd expect to see there and all that sort of stuff. And it begins to feel like a real place. So now that some of you may be looking at it thinking, my God, that sounds like a lot of work. I actually really enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a chore to me. Now, I think if it feels like a chore, then maybe it's not the right approach for you. But the feedback I've had on my stories is that the places that I write about and the characters that I put in them feel like believable places and believable people, and I put that down to not just hopefully I can write reasonably well, but not just that, but that I've spent some time trying to go make this place believable in some of its detail. I'm no Tolkien, okay? I'm not going to that nth degree of working out all the languages and how they spell things and all that stuff. I don't generally do family trees. I may do some very small ones. So not quite to the Tolkien nth degree of detail, but a certain amount of detail I think helps to underpin a novel. And if you can refer back to it and make it consistent, and when your characters refer back to events in the past and they refer back to the same event and then maybe reference it slightly differently because of their own experiences, that helps you as the reader put together a kind of, okay, so that's how the world works. There was a major war 30 years ago which they still kind of remember and they're a bit bitter about, or what happened, all those sorts of things. Just helps the world. There's this lovely word called verisimilitude, which is just really nice to say, a verisimilitude, and it's that sense of believability that you go, yeah, this place feels like it's lived in. It just hasn't just been zapped into existence for the sake of this story. It's other stuff has happened and is happening around my characters that I'm reading about, and your world feels lived in. It doesn't feel like it's brand new, and I think that sort of sense is quite important. So there we go. Birdbrain subscribed at tier 1. Thank you very much for the subscribe. I do appreciate that. Is there a plot summary? Actually, there wasn't in that one. No, I don't think I did the plot summary for Shadewood. Nim Duskrim will tell me Maru gets hurt a lot. Bad things happen to Maru a lot. That's the summary. You should blur it when I put up the VOD. Maybe I think it's too small. I don't think you'll get a great deal from it. I spoiled it for myself before reading the book. Well, I mean, hopefully. Well, see, that's an interesting thing between plotters and pansters as well. Is the plotter like me isn't usually surprised by the story. A lot of pansters will, and I see them going. I have no idea what's going to happen in the story. I'm just writing, and it's like, that to me is an odd. I just don't do it that way. It's not how I construct things. So I'm not surprised by the story. I am occasionally surprised by the dialogue, and I think that's where my creativity comes back out a second time. Okay, is that I'll have a scene. So, for example, in Shadewood, there's there'll be a scene. Let's take chapter 1. Kiri, in the synopsis, it's something like. Basically, Kiri pinches something. She's discovered pinching it. She has to run away. They catch her. They beat her up, and somebody intervenes. Okay, that's chapter 1, right? That's what the plot says. So as I'm writing it, I remember going through the process of, okay, then actually she's an urchin girl. She's not got a proper education. She's living on her wits. She's going to swear like a trooper, right? What's she going to say? And I don't like. I don't like contemporary swear words in science fiction and fantasy. In fact, I don't really like swear words at all. I use them very, very sparingly. But I thought, hang on, I need some not real swear words, if you know what I mean. Which a lot of people don't like. I get, and I understand why, because they can sound very artificial. But I thought, I need something. What's she going to say when she's cornered? and she's in fear of her life. What's she going to say? And I suddenly realised I didn't have a vocabulary for her to use. I had a style of speech, but I didn't have a vocabulary. And so I thought, well, what's she going to say? What feels right? All that sort of stuff. And Glenn's doing the Battlestar stuff. So actually the Battlestar stuff I thought was actually pretty good. Frack sounds really good. What the frack is that? I mean, everyone knows what they're replacing it with, right? But frack is a really good one. It sounds like the sort of things that people would say. And Felgercarb, I don't know what Felgercarb is. It sounds like something you scrape off the inlet housing of an engine. Oh, it's full of Felgercarb again. But and in Firefly they swore in in Mandarin. That's clever. Okay, I like that. Whereas in Shadewood I basically made up some swear words based on darkness being a bad thing because they never experienced it. They don't like darkness because it's always eternally lit. Things like that. So I was trying to make but at that point when I was putting the scene, I knew what happened in the scene, but when she was cornered and they had a bit of a fight, she needed to respond aggressively. So how is she going to do that? Okay, she'll swing a stick around and try and whack people, but she's going to swear, she's going to shout and be aggressive. What's she going to say? And all those sort of things. Smeg from Red Dwarf, that's a brilliant one. So that sort of stuff. And you have to make your character authentic. So if in the case of Kiri, she grew up as in the slums, fighting to survive every single day. She's not going to be all that articulate, but you're gonna have to get the impression she is. She's going to be violent. She's going to be nasty. She's going to have a mouth. So that is the sort of person. I needed that at that point in time. So I had to go off and invent some swear words. And sometimes that's the process you follow. You get to a point thinking, hang on a minute, I need a thing here. What is the thing that I need? And you have to go off and invent it at that point in time. So sometimes it's not immediately obvious from the plot. And sometimes I'm writing and then the characters will drift off into a side conversation, which is slightly adjacent to the plot. And I do have to watch it because sometimes they can just completely go off. If you don't, you can be writing, this is a great idea. Where am I going? I have no idea. It's just a natural conversation. And sometimes that goes somewhere useful and sometimes it doesn't. So, there are places where if I don't keep a firm hand on the tiller of the writing, then my characters will go off and have a conversation about something totally irrelevant. No, stop it. So I have, for every document, for every book I don't know if I can show you this again quickly. I have where is it? I can show you the structure of it. Where's the Elite Dangerous one? There we go. Let's go back there. Reclamation. It's going to be in draft 1 probably. Where's first draft? There it is. Okay. So I have. There we go. I have in every first draft. I have a not used ... So and here's a golden rule for me, for all you aspiring writers, is never ever throw anything away. Okay, never. If you delete it from your novel, that's fine, but put it somewhere else. And what I do is not very imaginative. I put it in a not used ... Okay, so every book I've got, particularly in the first draft, has a not used ... file, okay, which is basically everything that I wrote that I thought was originally going to be useful, but never made it into the final cut, okay, or at some point it got cut out. So in here there's whole sections, of stuff, an entire bit of dialogue that didn't make it into the story for whatever reason, but I keep it because you never know, right? And I have occasionally gone back and had a look through all my not used .doc files and gone, that's actually quite good. I might pinch that, change the names and reuse it and turn it around a bit. But sometimes the inspiration can be still there because whatever you've written in those files was good enough to be written originally. So maybe it's okay for something else. Farscape has a lot of swear words. Son of Lakai, I know. 2000 AD got the best ones in Grud and Drock, so they have to be easy things to say. So I mean, Chris Vikings pinched them there. Scorch, I've been scorched. Scorch that, because heat. And shade. What the shade is that? Things like that. Hopefully felt reasonably natural. Glenn says, do you ever have a contradictory or differing versions of ideas for your novel in your main document that you sort out there? I usually sort them out in that document. So I will have contrary ideas as I'm updating the document, but the document is basically the definitive version of those ideas. So yes, in the creative putting it together phase, but not ultimately. I won't have like, here are two endings that I might use. I don't do that. It's always ultimately the definitive thing in there. But yeah, so again, don't throw anything away that you've written. All right, don't throw anything away that you've written. Always keep it. To be honest, I've got an entire novel in here that I haven't used. I wrote it. Where is it? I wrote a book called. Where is it? Exile's Return. Here we go. So this is Exile's Return. You can see that one. There we go. It's a chunky. This is a chunky old story. Okay, so there's the prologue. It's very, very long. I don't know how many. There's 17,000 words there that I wrote in that one. Where's the rest of it? I think it must be that one. Here we go. It's massively long. 29. There's 29,000 words there. 2 bits of it. Never saw the light of day. Okay, never saw the light of day, that one, because it just didn't work. I just thought, I don't know where I'm going with this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have false starts as well. Okay, that just doesn't work. So there we go. Yes, it's quite good. Drew should put together a masterclass. Well, there is. I think Gian and I's kind of linked it. I did do some stuff on YouTube. So there's a YouTube playlist about all sorts of various different topics, quite specifically. They're a bit old now. Maybe I should go back and revisit them. And the video quality certainly won't be great because I didn't have a decent camera back in the day. But there is some stuff there that you may be able to find useful. So yeah, go and have a look at that. So what do you do when you change one of those ideas or change and it touches multiple other parts of the plot or multiple characters? So basically I just keep going back to it again and again and again until I'm happy it makes sense. That is very much an iterative process. Okay, so I don't expect to get the plot to work first time. The first time I go through it's ideas, and this happens, and then I'll get to a point where hang on, they can't do that because of this. And how am I going to hang on, if they do that, then this means that's not going to work. And I just keep going through that plot over and over again until I feel it makes logical sense. And only then, when the characters fit and the plot fits and the background slots in and the dates work and the passage of time between the different scenes works and there's enough going on that multiple characters are doing something and they've all got enough to do at different times in the story, only when that is kind of like, yes, okay, that feels about right. I don't know about you guys, but when something isn't quite resolved in my plot, that I've got this sort of anxiety about it. I've got like, it's not quite working, and I feel very uncomfortable with it. And until that feeling is gone, I read the plot and go, nope, that all looks good to me. I'm not getting any issues reading that now. Once that kind of anxiety that the plot isn't right goes and the characters feel good and all that sort of stuff, that's the point at which I start writing the actual story. So there's a sort of sense of using your own emotional stroke physical reaction to what you're reading as a sort of signpost to say yes, it's ready to go on to the next stage. So at the moment, with the Higara stuff I'm working on, I've got this massive spreadsheet, and it's all anxiety because that doesn't fit, and that time can't be right. It can't have that can't happen here because this hasn't happened, and that doesn't line up with this one. So I'm at that stage at the moment where it's all kind of like, and I quite enjoy it, but it's a sort of creative anxiety, if that makes sense, which is slightly uncomfortable because I want to get it resolved. The OCD part of me is going, I know that must fit, that must be right, and of course it can't be straight away. I've got to work on it and develop it, and that is, for me, slightly tense. I like doing it, but it's also slightly, it's anxiety. There's an anxiety that I haven't finished it yet, and I haven't got it right, and it must be correct, and it must be perfect, and all this sort of thing. And I've got to get there, and I'm not there at the moment, and it's going to take me quite a long time to get there. Freebooted, when the anxiety goes, freebooted, hello sir. When the anxiety goes, does it stay gone? It does for the bits that I've kind of signed off in my head. So I kind of go through structure of the book. So, I start off with the map. Does the map work? And then the timeline. Does the timeline work? Then the characters. Do the characters work? Then is the synopsis correct? Is the main story correct? Is the plot correct? And at every stage I'm kind of like, no, that's not right. Fix. And then, okay, that feels a bit better. And then, no, that's still not quite. So I go through anxious. Oh no, I've done it. Anxious. Oh no, I've done it. Lots and lots of times. And then I get to the end of that creative process of doing the whole background document thing. And I'm kind of like, yes, now the hard work can begin, and I start writing. But then it all comes back again because that piece of dialogue isn't quite, that's not quite what I want her to say. He's not reacting quite, I want to get something across here which I don't feel I'm quite getting across in this piece of dialogue, or this description just isn't doing justice to what I've got in my head. I can't think of a better word for green than green, or something like that. And so at every stage I get anxiety that I'm not doing it quite well enough. And the only way I found to deal with it is to put it down as best I can at the time and then come back to it again. And what I quite often find is I write the first bit down and I can't fix it, and it really winds me up, and so I can be quite grumpy for a while, right? And then I have to set it aside. I have to go and do something else. I mean, sometimes playing a computer game or taking the dog for a walk or doing the washing up, whatever it happens to be, is just enough to kind of get your brain out of that thing. And then you'll go, hang on a minute, what about and then I'll cycle around, go back to that scene, and I found a way of fixing it. And I also find that if I sometimes, and it's very weird, I'll go to sleep with a problem in my head thinking, how am I going to get so and so to do that when they can't do that and I can't resolve it in my conscious mind, and I'll go to sleep thinking about this issue, and I can only assume that my subconscious goes to work on it when I'm asleep, and when I wake up sometimes, not all the time, but occasionally when I wake up in the morning, I've just solved the so and so problem. And I have to quickly run into the study, fire up the computer and write it down before I forget it, because my subconscious has basically gone, leave it with me, I'll fix it for you by the morning. And sometimes my subconscious has somehow fixed the issue that my conscious mind wasn't able to resolve. So that's weird as well. But it is a process of keep bumping up against things that, how am I going to solve that? That's just not good enough. That's not right. That doesn't feel good. It's kind of there, but it's not kind of there. All those sort of things, I think, as a writer, you bump up into all the time. And you've got to basically sort of go with that, because it's a natural process of trying to create something. It isn't right to start with, and you've got to allow yourself time to get it right. And I think the anxiety that you experience is your sort of desire to make it good. And if you don't have that kind of anxiety, you're going to end up with that'll do, which I don't think actually makes for a good enough novel. So I wonder if the anxiety, in a weird sort of way, is actually really, really good, because it forces you to write something better. I don't know. That's how I'm going with it. Sounds almost like engineering the story. So yeah, I think you're trying to find better solutions to things. So the first thing you write won't be good. I mean, we all know that. The first thing that you write isn't as good as it needs to be. And that's partly kind of an editing process. But sometimes it's just a case of you can't quite get into words the thing that's in your mind, the sense of being there. I went through many scenes thinking, this is the definitive dramatic scene in the book. This has got to be really good. I've got to chuck every sense of emotion in here I can, every sense of being here. I've got to tick all the boxes in terms of the senses. I've got to tick all the boxes in terms of description, the character's reaction, to make the reader really go, oh, this is a big thing going on here. And I've written the first draft and gone, I've got it, and then I read it back and think it's just flat. It's just not gripping me, and I'm kind of fretting over why it's not gripping me. and I can't solve it there, and then I have to go back and leave it alone and come back and go, I need to just tweak that, need a bit more energy there. And iterating is good. Go over it several times, and that helps. So fix it in post. Writing is one of the rare things where this is not unacceptable but entirely desirable. I think it's good. You can go back and just read it again and again. I mean, my hand on heart kind of yardstick for when you finished your editing is when you basically can't pick up your book and read it again because you're sick to death of it. Okay. I'm slowly getting to that point now with Doom Dark's Revenge. I think I've read this story like 100 times now. I know what happens. I don't want to read it anymore. And I think when you get to that stage, your book is probably just about done. And then it's time to send it over to the proofreaders. So that sort of stuff is you after you've written a few books, you kind of know where you are in the process. I think that makes sense. It's the shoemaker whispering in your ear when you sleep. Dru is like a grumpy, expectant mother before the plot is settled. Oh yeah, my wife knows when I've got a problem because I become all grumpy and I'm not listening in on any important conversations in the real world because I'm still trying to figure out why that spaceship didn't get to the destination. So I'm not very good at that. I think the problems you have not noticed come out in second drafts and beta reader. Yeah, so it's important for other people to read your stuff as well, obviously, because you can't see everything. But if you spend a lot of time on the plot early on, hopefully most of the major howlers are sorted up. As an architect, it sounds very familiar. Part of the design process, trying to balance all the competing requirements and making more than some of its parts. I think that's good. Yeah, I think it is an architectural thing. You put in the foundations, the lore and the events and stuff, and then you build up the structure, the description, and the characters and the dialogue and the scene setting and the pacing and all that sort of stuff. But it does all have to come together, and it is they do all compete with each other, depending on the sort of novel that you're trying to write. So I think it is quite interesting, but it is being a creative endeavour. You're always second guessing yourself with questions like. Is this good enough? Is anybody going to read this? Does anybody even like what I'm writing? All those questions come back and haunt you. Can I do justice to this other thing that I'm referring? I felt that really, really keenly when I wrote my Elite books and the Lords of Midnight and Doom Dark's Revenge, is because I'm working in somebody else's creative space. Okay, so I'm taking in both of those cases a computer game that people know well, who aren't me, other players, who will have very, very strong perceptions of what that's supposed to be like. And I've got to engage with that audience, and I've got to get it right. Which means my detail needs to be correct, my sense of the game needs to be correct, my understanding of the political structures needs to be correct. All those details that, if you don't get them right in those contexts, readers are just going to go, no, this, it's not right. It's not right, It's not grabbing me because it's not true to the universe that it's set in. Now that doesn't apply in your own works, but if a reader goes, well, hang on a minute, last week they did this, in last chapter they were able to do that. Why can't they do that now? And if you've got a glaring plot hole in there that because you haven't followed your own strictures and your own law, readers will see through it and go, well, it's not great because they're just hand waving themselves out of a problem, and if they could do that, why didn't they do that in chapter 2? All those sort of things. You don't want that, I don't think, and I try really, really hard to avoid it, which is why I spend so much time in the background document trying to make sure everything makes sense and there aren't any plot holes. Beta readers. So to me, beta readers come in very late in the day. I tend to employ beta readers. When would I employ? I tend to employ them. It's difficult. Sometimes before sort of major professional independent editing, and sometimes after. It depends on how confident I feel in the description. Because when the editor gets hold of your book, that's usually a gateway to production. It's probably sensible to have beta readers before then, so that they can pick out any plot holes before you send off to the editor, who's going to go through the document and really tweak your language. You don't really want to be adding in extra scenes post major editing. So beta readers are probably just, I would say, prior to serious independent editing, but post your own editing. So in my case, I typically get to the third draft before I've got a book that I feel is consumable by beta readers. And I will send that off to them with a caveat saying, this is not a fully edited document. Okay, there will be errors, there will be pacing problems, etc., etc., etc. Please, can you read this with a view of just telling me whether the story works rather than critiquing anything else, because that's somebody else's job. So I would normally go first draft. That's just me brain dumping the story. Second draft is me going through that with a fine tooth comb, going, does that pacing work? Is there a right amount of passage of time? Have all my characters got sufficient airtime? Is the story arc working? Does it make sense? Does it feel right? All those sort of things. So at the end of, when I get to draft 3, I'm now fine-tuning everything to make sure it's all good. And draft 3 is probably the version I would give to beta readers for them to give me feedback on. And then that feedback will come in, and then I'll blend that into a fourth draft, and that is the one that goes to the professional editor, who will basically then adjust it for pace and all the other bits and pieces, and good dialogue and narrative, and spelling mistakes, and all the other structures that the editors are good at. And then we have a release candidate for the production process. So that's kind of how I do it. So there we go. Chris Viking, that's one thing I think was good for me listening to the 3 Shable books that are out on Audiobook. The descriptions of certain feelings and she did this and that. I had removed so much of it because I was afraid I went undertelling and not showing. But now it's right, then I feel free. Yeah, so you've got to balance stuff. I think the old show don't tell is a bit of a cliche of itself now, but I still think it's really good advice, particularly if you're a relatively inexperienced writer. So if you've not got too much stuff under your belt, show don't tell is a really, really good thing to use as a yardstick. You can tell a bit once you know when and where to use telling, if that's sounds like really bad English. But as a general rule, I would advise newer, less seasoned writers, shall I say, to avoid telling wherever possible. Because it generally slows down the pace of the book, and your readers will go, ooh, this is really taking a bit of a nosedive, and I'm not finding it so compelling. It's the difference between, if you're totally new to this, show don't tell is basically show the reaction, don't tell us the reaction. So telling would be, she looked really upset. Okay, that's telling. Showing would be, she burst into tears and pounded her fist on the wall. Okay, that's the difference. Okay, they're both implying the same thing. Clearly, she is upset, but one's just boldly told you she's upset, and the other one is allowing you as the reader to go, "Oh, she's upset." Okay, that's the difference. Is exposition dialogue telling or showing? Now, okay, so exposition in dialogue, if it feels natural. Okay, but you mustn't chuck too much. I don't think, anyway, you mustn't chuck too much exposition to dialogue. There can be some, but as long as it feels natural. So our classic example that we use on this stream, we've used it many times. I think I've got it somewhere. Hang on a minute. This is, we had a expedition done. Where is it? I think it's called Audi TT. Is it Audi TT? Where is it? Where did we put it? I can't remember. We definitely had. I don't know where I put it. It's in there somewhere. Anyway, it's basically bad exposition, and it goes something like this. It basically goes, John talking to Dave at work. Oh, this morning I jumped into my Audi TT and I fired up the internal combustion engine. Would you believe it? The fuel in the cylinders ignited, the pistons started moving, I put it into gear, the cogs meshed in a medium of quickly moving oil, and the movement of those cylinders was transferred to the drive system. The tyres engaged and I was able to move down the road successfully, finally getting to Tesco's where I bought a pint of milk. Okay, now it's an extreme example, right? But it's basically, if what you're describing is something that is true, but is not something the character would say in that instance, because all the other characters would know what the hell they were talking about. Okay, so you don't in our world you don't need to explain how a car works. Okay, because everybody knows what a car is for, and it's the same in the sci-fi universe. We don't need to explain how the engines work or the laser weapons or whatever it happens to, because the characters know that. They've seen them work 100 times. It's just plain old hat to them. So putting that sort of stuff in, instantly makes your novel feel wrong, because the characters should know this stuff. So never describe how the laser pistol works. It's a laser pistol. It shoots lasers. Okay, it's the same as a gun. It shoots bullets. We don't need to know any physics about that sort of stuff. There's the flip side. Okay, so exposition. Are the characters are allowed to tell stories about things gone by? Yes, they are. But you kind of have to choose your moment. So in an action scene is not the position for a character to go, by the way, do you know about the Great Battle of 1725 when we... That's not going to happen. Okay? So if you have to watch your pacing. So you can put exposition in the dialogue. But you have to choose the moment to do it. So, for example, if your characters have had a big action scene and they've survived, and they're now chilling around the campfire, several hours later, going, we only just got away with that. That reminds me of the Great Battle of 1765. What happened there then? Well, you wouldn't believe how we were up against it. That will work. Okay, because the characters are chilled out, they've got a bit of time to relax, and your reader will be in the just got through the action sequence. Now they're chilling out around the campfire. I can kind of chat. What are they chatting about? Let's get alongside the characters. So that does work. Okay, so pick your moment if you want your characters to talk about the history of whatever's going on. Now, if they're in a modern contemporary setting, if they're stuck on the train, or they're in a queue for an airport, or any of those kind of things, or they're just on a general amble somewhere, if they've got time to have a chat, that's fine. But if they haven't got time to have a chat, then that's not fine. I've freebooted. I've been reading aloud The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings to my kids. Gandalf does go a lot, particularly at the beginning, isn't it? Well, here's the history, young Hobbit, of the ring and Sauron, the Dark Lord. massive, huge paragraph. Yeah, so that generally is a bit frowned upon today. That is a bit of a style thing. I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's probably out of fashion. Okay, waiting for petrol, yeah. So if you're in a queue waiting for petrol, that's going to be a thing in books coming up. So that's that sort of stuff. You've got to pick your moment. I think pick your moment. If there isn't a sense of immediate peril, and the characters have time to have a chat, and they're in the mood for a chat, and it feels right in that context of the scene, that is a good place to do it. But I wouldn't do it too often, because people don't normally sit down and give lectures about topics. That's not, Gandalf aside, that's not how people normally talk. They'll do it, but in a kind of interactive way. So if you listen to people talking, they'll go, yeah. Do you remember the great Battle of 1750? Oh yeah. Well, I knew a couple of people who were there. Did you? Yeah. Oh, my uncle was in that. He always said that it was very one-sided. It wasn't one-sided. Yeah, we kicked it. Yeah, we did this. Well, I heard the dwarves won. Really? No, it was the elves. Actually, they had the upper hand. That's how to get the exposition into the dialogue. Don't just do back in the age of 1751. Otherwise it's just a lecture, isn't it? So that sort of thing. So all of those things are things you can play with to make the background story interesting and get it into the main story, so that the characters kind of interact with it. This is just like that Battle of 1751. You said it. Those sort of things could be quite fun as well. So I think Glenn's right there. If you have a character telling a story which is a backstory, just break it up with other bits and pieces. I think those sort of things, it can work. You've just got to mix and match it and make it feel like it's a natural thing that the characters would be doing. And trends do change. Trends definitely do change. No need to explain to anyone British, we know how to queue. So there we go. So anyway, right, I need to head off, I'm afraid, my friend, because I've got to get up early in queue. Which I'm not really looking forward to. Feel for me, I'm going to have to get up really early, sit in a car in a queue. I will be taking my laptop with me, and I will be editing Doomdark's Revenge in a queue for a petrol station at 5 o'clock in the morning. Only in the UK. So tomorrow is going to be a long day. But there we go. It's got to be done. I've got to get some petrol for my son. He's actually got 2 cars, so he's taking one car to work, and I'm taking the other one to fill it up with fuel for him. So he's got another car when he comes back that he can actually use to take him back to work the following day. Because that makes sense, right? Anyway, that craziness aside, hopefully my normal streaming schedule will be back to normal this week. So Thursday should be No Man's Sky, and Saturday we should be back for more retro games. We're going to try and complete Wing Commander. So that's great. Commander Lenslock, yes. What happened to then? We passed then. Anyway, my friends, take it easy. See you soon. Always write on, okay? Just keep writing, never stop writing. There you go. Encouragement. Go for it. Take care, my friends. Lovely to chat to you, and look after yourselves. Have a fantastic week ahead. And if you're here for No Man's Drive on Thursday, I will see you then. Take care and speak to you soon. Bye bye now.